Maybe we start this with you reading this little blurb here about Petaluma is to have a new playhouse, and we just kind of see what happens.
I love this.
Yeah.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. So, Theater for Petaluma. This was a story that came out December 26th in 1903 in the San Francisco Dramatic Review. Petaluma is to have a new playhouse. Mrs. Josie P. Hill, widow of late William Hill and her son A.B. Hill, will build for Petaluma a modern, up-to-date theater. The sale was made last Thursday to a number of pieces of real estate which form the site for the building. The lots have a frontage of 104 feet on Washington Street and 119.7 feet on Keller Street. The intention of the new owners is to erect a modern theater on the property at the cost of about $25,000. That's a huge amount of money, $25,000. I don't even know where I'd get that right now. Anyway, yet I digress. Perhaps by the time it was ready for occupancy, that cost could have soared up to near $40,000. Eventually, the new building, when completed, may be given to the city. The Opera House is to be fitted with the most modern appurtenances and furnishings. It will front on Washington Street, and that will improve that part of town greatly. I know across the street was a brick building that housed rooms that you could rent up above, and I believe a hardware store below, and some sundries and stuff like that. And some of my first memories of this theater, when it was the California Theater, was that building just after they had torn it down, and it was just a big pile of bricks there for many years. And there was a little bit of the foundation I remember going up the other side of Keller Street.
$25,000, by the way, in 1904.
Yeah.
According to this calculator online, $726,000 in 2020.
You know, which is not a bad deal.
No.
They built it economically. Now, when they brought it up to $40,000, that must have made it somewhere close to $1 million at that. Woof.
All right. Well, welcome to the danger zone. Welcome to coronavirus. Welcome to living through history.
Okay. Welcome to On Quarantine
with Jim and Tom. All right. Coronavirus. What's your take on this?
Boy. It almost feels like it's kind of a reset. And just all of a sudden, boom, everything is frozen. And I am amazed, really. We went on lockdown Tuesday night at midnight.
Yeah.
And I am amazed at how quickly this town really did lock down and how quickly the Bay Area is locked down. I would hazard maybe 90% of us are truly taking this thing seriously enough that our streets are pretty darn empty.
I liked it when the Phoenix kids were talking in front of you about if you got it, who would take over the Phoenix.
Oh, yeah. So that's a weird thing. And and really, dudes, I'm standing right in front of you, if you don't mind. And they're not the only ones, really. A bunch of my friends are saying, well, man, we got to take care of this in case anything happens to me. What? What do we? Well, okay, well, I'm hoping it doesn't. I think if you allow yourself to be defeated, then, of course, you will be defeated. So... I'm planning on sticking around for a while.
What a good segue. If you allow yourself to be defeated, then you will be defeated.
Yeah.
Here we are in the Defiant Phoenix Theater.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's see. Well, we did one of these 3 days ago.
Yeah.
And at midnight that night, it went into effect, shelter in place.
Shelter in place.
Which means, effectively, this show is sort of on hiatus.
We're sheltering.
Yeah, and so we've Tom and I've been talking, and we've been thinking like, well, we still want to do this.
Yeah,
so we're gonna do some different sort of formats. No video crew, just he and I talking.
Yeah, 6 feet apart.
Tonight, we're just kind of like looking into miscellaneous stories we haven't shared on here before, or we've only touched on briefly. Some of these are Phoenix related, some of them are show related. I think we have touched on this next one, but we haven't touched on the other one, and that is the kind of 2 times people have died in this building.
Okay.
One came back to life in the doorway.
Yeah.
During a No Means No show.
That's okay. That's true.
So let's go into that, and then the other one is more of a kind of a bit of a folk tale. But let's start with this No Means No show, because it actually has to do with somebody who's very important to the soul of the Phoenix and also a great friend of yours.
The kid that was, yeah, that was, I'll call him Joel. I don't know how far. I love Joel, and he was a kid that spent a lot of time here. But yeah, it was a great show. I think it was Victim's Family and No Means No, and the place was sold out. And in those days, we could get legally 1,000 people in here. I'm sure we had 1,000 people in here. This place was full, and the pit was going off, the stage was going off, the bands. It was such a great night. One of the best lineups of bands you could ever see in your lifetime. And so we'd gotten done. Victims had gotten done. All we had to do now was live through the headliners, No Means No, which was a smoking band. And all we had to do was get those guys on stage, and we were golden. My friend Joel, apparently he was a kid in those days, was so high on drugs that he was going out the east floor exit of the building just before the headliner was to go on, and he passed out halfway in the door and halfway out the door. Boom, down. Could not revive him. We had to call an ambulance to find out what the hell had happened to Joel. And there he was, halfway in, halfway out. The ambulance came.
Just important note, Green Day was opening that show.
It was Green Day
opened played first, and then No Means No and Victim's Family. I don't know what the order exactly. But anyway, it was those three bands.
Yeah, we were waiting for the headliner to come on. I think it was No Means No was headlining.
Yeah.
And what a show. All I needed to do was get the headliner on, which would have been an incredible show, and then get everybody the hell out of the building before it got any worse. Because it would have been, oh, what a night. Oh,
So here was the incredible thing.
Yeah.
Waiting for the headliner to go on, you, the consummate promoter, are like, show must go on. Show must go on. Joel must survive.
Yeah,
show must go on.
Yeah, well, Joel's got to survive. And I'm sure that not once in my mind did I think Joel was going to die in that doorway, except the ambulance got here, and they injected something into him to wake him up or bring him to, and he redlined. I remember those words. Oh, he's redlining. Whoa! Shit. Now they're plugging that electric thing in with Joel. And, oh, my God.
And you have 1,000 people in the building.
Yeah.
And really a really tough moment.
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking, well, so, all right, what's it going to take to drag this dead guy out on the sidewalk and get this show started? Joel, damn it. Anyway, luckily, he came to, son of a gun. And they put him on the gurney and took him to the hospital, and there was Joel, and we got to have the show.
And he's still alive to this day.
And he's absolutely still alive to this day and doing quite well.
Yeah, a father.
Yeah, absolutely.
He was a contractor when we talked about this last. I don't know if he still is.
Yeah, because he came by, a couple months ago, several months ago, I think we saw Joel. And he'll drop in every so often. And, what a piece of history he is. There's no doubt about it.
All right, the other death. Do you remember the other death?
Well, are you talking about...
You were not here, and the building wasn't here either.
That's what I thought you were talking about. That one, I maybe have a loose agreement not to talk too much about it. I have always thought that there's somebody maybe, if you believe in ghosts, and if I had to believe in a ghost, I would think the big guy that occasionally walks across the stage, and he's been heard by so many people over the years, especially when it's late. When you're sleeping on the stage, you're sleeping somewhere in the building, and you hear the big footfalls coming across the stage, like somebody big is walking across. And I've always been aware of him and felt quite comfortable, actually, around that presence. And I always thought, well, this guy, if he were a ghost of the Phoenix, he would be maybe a stage manager or one of the big stage hands, maybe working the up in the fly area. But strangely, a psychic from the Berkeley Psychic Institute came in one day and said, you've got a very large energy up on your stage. And I think he was an energy that was here before this was a theater. And I think if you looked, you'd find that this was probably a livery stable or something like that, and he was working in that stable. And it was. That part he got. I don't know if a lot of people knew that that before the theater was here, it was kind of a livery stable. They built wagons and serviced wagons and stuff like that, and I think boarded some horses and things. So the guy nailed that part of it, And years ago, we named the big guy Chris. I do remember why, but he reminded me so much of a very large friend of mine named Chris. So we named Chris. And, and still people will talk about hearing somebody walking across the stage. And that'd be Chris, if that is indeed what he is.
I don't know if you want to go into this next thing, but again, as I was kind of thinking about what we include tonight, I was thinking about all the stuff and people we haven't really talked about on here that are kind of essential to the soul of the building.
Sure.
So not Joel, who died in the doorway, but another Joel.
Joel Cox.
Yeah, Joel, who is...
Yes, absolutely.
There's a couple tributes to him in the building.
Oh, yeah, all throughout the building. He was quite a special kid. That kid.
Do you want to, if you're willing, and if you...
I'll do a quick one on Joel.
Yeah, or whatever feels appropriate.
Well, he was... he moved here from Arizona when he was in, I think, 9th grade. And he found his way down here pretty quick. And that very first day he was here, he was, I'm working in the concession area, and I hear just the loudest kid in the world making noise in the hallway over here on the stage right side of the building. And I come walking over and say, this kid, this is some loud, obnoxious kid with a very high voice, wanting everybody to see that he's here. And I find him breakdancing in the hallway there, being loud and obnoxious. I'm thinking, oh, God, great. This is good. Well, he hung out most of the day, and at the end of the evening, just as the evening was starting, the end of the day, I'm out cleaning up the parking lot out in back. It's a rainy day, and I'm cleaning some garbage out of some puddles and stuff like that and throwing stuff away, and he's back there. He joins me back there, and I find myself discussing physics with this kid. First time in the hallway, I had, who are you? And okay, great, wonderful. And I went back to work. Now he joins me in the parking lot, and this kid is a bloody genius. Oh my God, the conversations that in the very first time I had a chance to really discuss with him, I had to just, who are you? Holy cow, who is this kid? He got to be just one of my favorite souls in this building, and what a special kid. We would have breakfast in his senior year in high school. We were doing breakfasts on Wednesdays. I think that's how his schedule worked. We'd get together for 11 o'clock breakfast, and usually down at, tea room.
There we go.
Usually down at the tea room. And it got to the point, Joel would call me up the night before and tell me what we were going to talk about, so I would be prepared for the discussion. This kid was just one of the smartest kids. He could be totally irreverent and totally out of his mind, totally loud and clumsy, or he could be one of the most skillful speakers, one of the most thoughtful people you've ever met, one of the smartest, and one of the most inspirational. He lived at 521 Baker with his mother. Joel held court at that house, and in his room, it was a place where his friends would go and talk philosophy and go and talk issues that teens would talk about, and boys and girls, and he was an inspiration to study for most of his friends. He had a habit of going on walkabouts, and he would take a friend with him, and they would walk maybe from here to Katati and back in one walk, just because. They would walk out to the old Adobe just because and back. They'd go on these long walkabouts and talk about all kinds of things, stuff that was important to his crew and his friends. And what a great crew he had. And out of the blue one day, he and maybe Cameron and one of his friends were walking by the Marine recruiters, or the Army recruiters, over across the street from Whole Foods. And there was a sign that said, "We'll give you a free shirt if you come in and talk to us." So he went in and talked to them and got the free shirt, and son of a gun if he didn't sign up. He was 18 and he signed up to go. And they came down to the theater that day and said, "I just signed up to go into the Army." Whoa, what? That's so weird. And he certainly would have ended up in Afghanistan or Iraq fighting. They would have loved to have him. He would have been an incredible soldier. He was a very peaceful soul and a most incredibly beautiful soul. But I think the one thing about Joel is whatever the experience, he was in it. And he would have been a great soldier. He was at boot camp, and he was sitting in some bleachers, lacing up his shoes, getting ready to do a run, and he stood up and fell down and had a heart attack that killed him immediately. And it turns out that Joel had the same heart condition that his father had. It was a very, very small, undetectable hole in the heart that apparently was one day set to blow. And he knew this, and weirdly, the day he took off to go to the Army, it was a Wednesday. So we had breakfast at 11, and then he was going to go to his house where there was he went to his house where there was going to be a going away party with him and his friends, and then he was off. And we went to tea room, we had breakfast, and we were sitting in my truck. I dropped him off at his house. We looked at each other, and I said goodbye. And there was that moment when I should have hugged him, and I did not, because I'm not a hugging guy. And that was the one hug that I absolutely regret not having. He was a good friend. He was only here he was like Elton John's Maryland song. He was a candle in the wind. He was here to drop a message to some people, leaving some important plans, and then take off. And through all of this, he left me a good friend. His mother, Allison, is one of my favorite people in the world. And boy, Joel was he was a mover and a shaker in a lot of people's lives, and he still is. His friends still remember him. We still have the chair that was in his room at 521 Baker back in our dressing room, and I'll never forget Joel. And I tell his story all the time. We still have the article up on the wall of the box office, and I'll point that out to certain kids when I say, you need to know about Joel.
His mother, Allison, is somebody I met through you.
Yeah.
And she wrote something in tribute to a man that she knew named Bill, who she credits to really giving her some insight that kind of changed her life. And it's a little lengthy, but I'd like to read it because it's been something that has come back to me a lot. And we'll just see if it works here. So I'm cutting it down a lot, but here we go. Bill explained the concept of service to me. He told me that there would come a time when everything and everyone would fail me, the people, the program, even God, with whom Bill had issues and of whom Bill had doubts, although he was one of the most spiritual men I would ever meet. All of these things would fail me, he said, and the only thing that would save my life is saving someone else's, because in the end, the only life we really ever save is our own. He warned me that if service did not become second nature, I would not be able to fall back on it when the time came. So she goes on, she says, I watched and I learned, and service I did. Service in its different forms sustained me through the death of my alcoholic father and my early sobriety, just at the point when I began through my own alcoholism and recovery to understand and forgive. Service sustained me through the collapse of my very brief marriage and the subsequent death of my ex-husband, who loved me with a depth of which I was incapable, and who gave me a quirky, bright, and magnificent child. And one day, that time came for me, the day Bill was talking about, when it all collapses around your feet. On November 18th, 2003, as I was negotiating a faculty position in Arizona, my magnificent son, who had gone off to serve in the Army Reserves, suffered a sudden and fatal heart attack. My darkest hour had arrived, and sitting in a corner eating Valium had been taken off the table those many years ago. My only option was to go right to the center of it. She goes on to talk about how she turned down the faculty position, she joined the Peace Corps, and she went to Africa to do HIV outreach and education.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
She was sent to the country with the highest HIV prevalence in the world. 38.6% of the adult population was HIV positive. And basically...
What a woman. What a strong individual Allison is. She's really quite special. Because then I believe she also ended up in Tibet working with prostitutes for a period. This was, I think, she did some time in Afghanistan for a short period and working, and that was where it really got dangerous for her, and she, I think, had to end up leaving for her safety, because she was an advocate for women in a country that does not allow women advocacy, I think.
All right, last tribute one I want to do. This one is very personal, and I understand if you don't want to do it, but Nate Reifers. Because
one of the two Nates.
and we can talk about both, but Nate Reifers is what I'm talking about. And I think that he influenced you personally, probably more than most people that you meet.
Nate was one of the most important moments I had down at the theater, and he was only 10 years old at the time, and we were a movie theater, but we also had video games all over the building, and Nate was a quarter grabber. You got a quarter? Give me a quarter. Give me a quarter. So, and he was loud and obnoxious, and he was 10 years old, and it was a busy night. We were having a movie, and stuff was going on. I had people all over the building, and Nate was just on my heels. Hey, can I get a quarter? Can I get a quarter? Can I get a quarter? And I give him a quarter, and he'd come be back right back at me. He was on top of me the whole time. Finally, I turned around and go, Nate, I don't have time for this. I'm busy right now, and I don't have time for this. And I turned around and got about 2 steps away, and it's like, boom. It's like somebody kind of slapped me in the back of the head and said, whoa, what are you doing? Did you just tell a kid that you don't have time for him? And he was still standing there when I turned around. And I said, oh, yeah, that was tight. And I really need to. He taught me to get out of myself. And it's a speech that I'll give a lot of kids. I turned around and said, oh, fuck, Nate. Look, here's the deal. I am really busy, but I promise you, if you need me, you can always tell me I need you. And you need to get out of yourself so that I can have a moment with you. And that's an important lesson that I think that I got to learn it, and I'm glad I did. Everybody should. We get so into our moments and our lives and the things we need to get done. Sometimes you don't notice when somebody is saying, I need to have a moment with you. I need your words. I need just your attention. And it's a need. It's not a want, and it's not frivolous. It's something that is truly needed. And that's the best thing you can do, is just turn around and be there in that moment for whoever that is. A loved one, a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a kid, somebody you work with. There are times where if you can remember just to get out of yourself for a moment and turn around. And Nate taught me that at that moment. And I never forgot it. And I use that speech a lot when there's a kid that seems like, this kid is going to need to have a little, is going to need to know that there is somebody that will turn around and talk if you need them. But not just kids. There's a lot of adults out there that need this as well. And you have to remember to do the same thing if you can. It's such a hectic and busy world.
How much of yourself did you see in that 10-year-old Nate?
Well, I grew up on West Street. Nate grew up on Howard Street. And
I ask only because I feel like as a child you sort of had that same thing.
I was a loud and obnoxious kid. I really was. I know that now. Boy, what I would do for attention at times.
I only bring it up because you and I, when we've had been on the same team doing battle against local officials, there will be times when you feel as if you're not being listened to, either by them or by me. Yeah. And you're like, it's important that you acknowledge that. Oh, right. Because you say, like when that is something that happens to you when you're younger. Guy, I know plenty of people this is like. It almost takes you back there.
It does. Yeah. You know that. Well, I can't remember. The last incident was the stairs over there, and when I was done finally talking to one of the guys at the city, he told me, "Look, we're gonna accept it just like that, but you got to promise me you're not gonna call me anymore." Oh my God, I driven that guy crazy.
Little did they know, it's the best weapon you have in your arsenal. Yeah, they won't listen to this. It's the tire them out from having to deal with you, so they just leave you alone.
Oh man, yeah, he basically, okay, fine, that's gonna be fine. Just don't call me again.
Let's come back to Nate in a second. What's your favorite showdown with authorities over the last 30 years?
Oh, gee, I'd have to.
I like the one. I like the one when we had a rave, not a rave. It was like a dance, and there was a certain officer who was accusing us of certain things, and you poked him in his chest, and you were like, fuck you, and you called him by his first name.
Oh,
don't tell me how to run my theater.
Yeah, I got that a lot.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there was one time I don't even know what show it was. Jeez, it was in the mid of the 90s somewhere, and we just had a sold out show that, of course, while it was sold out inside the Phoenix, it was also sold out in the neighborhood. The whole neighborhood was involved in all of the big shows we did here. And finally, one night when it was all over and all done and everybody was out the building, the police came crashing in about something. And the thing that they complained the most about was I was sitting in my office with my feet up on my desk. But this was, I mean, holy shit. These things would start at like 2 PM when the bands would load in. And the building was already full of kids and people, and the neighborhood was already jumping. And then we'd load in and do sound checks, and my God, we'd have the show, and the blood and the fights and the pits and the stage diving. Oh my God, I wish everybody in the world could live through a moment of what I got to live. What an honor! What an incredible experience it was to live through some of those things. It was absolute pandemonium. But we'd had anywhere from 1,000 to 900 people in this building on the sold out
Good
show.
direction. Don't go the other one.
Right. And depending on what the legal limit was at the time.
Yeah.
And boy, I mean, 99% of those people had the time of their lives. That's the weird thing about Green Day. Of all the tunes that I love of theirs, that's my favorite tune of theirs because it sounds like I felt at the end of some of those shows. I hope you had the time of your life. And it's such a mellow song for Green Day, but when they wrote it, it was like I heard that song and I realized, oh my God, that's how I feel at the end of all of these shows. When it's an incredible show, you finally have that quieter moment, and it's still got melody and harmony, and it's still a tune. The whole show, any show you do is a tune. Oh my God, the energy, oh gosh, the sounds, the smells, what you see, the visuals. It's just like this whole onslaught of, but it's really like this major tune just being blown out. If the roof wasn't on, it'd all be blowing straight out the roof, and it probably is. And at the end of it, you get this quiet moment where you can finally look back on it and say, oh, I hope you had the time of your life. It was, and I've never been able to tell Billy Joel about it because I haven't really seen him since then. But that would be what I tell him. Geez, you wrote one of the coolest tunes.
You know when I get that feeling, when I do a show here, it's when the building is finally closed and the tour bus is gone, the fans are gone, there's trash all over the place,
yes,
but they're still in the building.
Yes, there's that. Yes, that's still a moment in the building. And so there I was. The police came in, and I had my feet up on my desk, and one of them made some kind of a comment. I go, and I'm like, you know what? By the end of the night, by tomorrow morning, this entire street's going to be clean, and you wouldn't even know we did this show by the time I'm done. And it was true, because I would start all the way down at Western Avenue and clean from Western to Washington. I'd clean the parking garage. I cleaned the parking lot at the market. Then I would go up to the corner of Liberty and Washington, and I'd go all the way back behind the market and come this way and pick up all the bottles and all that, and then clean all the way down. It would take me an additional 2 hours after every show or better, and that was with some people helping, although I did it the best. And and yeah, I remember that particularly contentious discussion, and that fuck you. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Look, we have a great police department, and we always did.
We get along great with everybody now. We just have pockets where we don't. We're not blaming anyone.
Things happen. We were in the middle of downtown Petaluma, no, it was never a quiet town. When I was a kid, this was not a quiet downtown. But here we were in small town Petaluma on a corner, being louder than anybody has a right to be. And we managed this town, as much as angry as we made them, they did let us keep doing it.
Let's go back to Nate.
Nate Reifers.
So we learned about origin story, 10 years old. He's grabbing quarters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he ended up.
Said,
well,
go away.
I had to put him to work here because it was just, there was no getting rid of him.
Yeah.
He really became, over the years, my best friend. That kid, he was here for a long time, and just he was he was a crew leader. He would get people going. He he was a rebel and a rabble rouser, and just out for the adventure. This kid lived the adventure for a short period when he was a kid. I think he was living on the roof of a dentist's It was a couple blocks from where he lived, but he was living on the roof of a dentist building next door to the 7-Eleven up the street. And that was his spot. Some kids, when he was in junior high, some of the older kids came to me and said, Tom, you got to have a talk with Nate. What? Well, he's selling porn now at the junior. Oh, God. Good, Nate. Can I get a cut of that? No. Anyway, Nate was just that kid. He was also out to make a buck, but make it legal. Well, not legally.
Well, that came a little later. But so even as a teenager, you considered him a close friend and kind of a peer.
Yeah, and he became a peer quicker than not. And then, strangely,
and by the end of your friendship, one of your best friends.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
And so he was a presence here. Anything else that you want to share before we get to
Boy, this kid, whatever he was doing to the max. Absolutely. And, this story starts, well, it starts when he was a kid, but the final of this story starts, best we could tell from his friends and experiences. He was at a party in the mountains above Santa Cruz, and it was a psychedelic party. And Nate was pretty certain that he was at this party with Beelzebub, with Satan. And the story went that he made a deal. He wanted to be one of the most successful growers up in Mendocino. And through sheer tenacity and quick wit, I will say he became, best I can tell from what I hear, a very, very successful businessman up north, and highly regarded, highly respected by everybody that he ever came into contact and worked with, and very quickly became very successful. He introduced me to the band Devil Makes Three. He'd seen them at the Forestville Club and said, you got to get these guys in here. And we had them several times, and he always had a party somewhere in the area because he was living up in Mendocino at this point. He would bring his friends down, his whole crew down. They'd have this big party in town, and then they'd come and see the show. And that was he was in town jamming with some friends and recording some stuff. And they recorded this rap. And Nate said in this rap, I'm going to be leaving, and I want you guys to check in on my daughter and keep up and make sure she's okay. I didn't hear this rap until after he had passed. Nate was in town with his friends and his crew to see a Devil Makes Three show at the Phoenix Theater. And the show was over, and I didn't see him go. So I didn't get to say what I always say, be safe out there. And he went downtown with some friends. He saw another friend of his actually get stabbed down on Petaluma Boulevard by someone he did not know. So Nate and his buddies gave chase on the guy who had stabbed their friend and caught up with him behind a Seared restaurant. It was, I think, it was a different restaurant in those days. And caught up with him behind the restaurant, and as he was running up, the guy apparently just stuck his knife out, and Nate kind of ran into the knife, and he got him. He nicked him in the heart. So Nate died on right behind on Water Street, behind the restaurant on Water Street, and that was a tough one. Normally, he would not get out of the building without me making some note. I was busy that night, and I didn't see Nate as he left, and that would have been the last time I saw him. I met him when I was busy, and I lost him when I was busy. Just first time I made that connection. Nate Reifers. Whew. He had, and then all these stories about all these things. I had no idea about the party in Santa Cruz, but I heard about it when we were all having a memorial for him up at the Usal River. And the connection with coming to see Devil Makes Three, for his last show. It's just, wow. It certainly, in its weird way, makes you look back and wonder what is real in this world and what is possible in this world, and wow. Yeah, that was quite a story with Nate, and I'll always miss him to the day I die. Here's the deal. Like I say, I think I've always said, as you know, that I intend to come back and do another adventure. And I'm thinking, so if that's the way it went, I could pretty much tell you, I don't know if I'd be willing to go back and have an adventure in Nate's next life, because I think at this point he was ready to jump out to something. I mean, who knows? Maybe he was going to go be Alexander in the next life. Tough to tell, but I don't know if I want to be second on that trip. I'll see him in a mellower time.
And I don't know if this is too much, but he was also there for you if this had gone away at the Phoenix, right? I mean, he had a place for you. He was pretty much like,
he did.
If it goes away, if the Phoenix goes away, thing you've dedicated a lot of your time to, don't worry, you'll be taken care of.
He had a plan for a project we were going to do, absolutely, which, I'll leave that on the table.
Yeah.
But actually, Nate had it kind of worked out. When it looked like we were going to lose the theater, he came to me with a plan that really would have been wonderful to a degree. But it was the Phoenix. It always is the Phoenix for me.
Another one that I love that we've never talked about on this show is when the Birds premiered here.
We haven't talked about that?
I mean, if we have, it was 150 episodes ago.
Well, I was about 7 years old, and I had come to see that. It was a big thing. So they filmed, Alfred Hitchcock filmed the Birds in the town of Bodega and also in the town of Bodega Bay, and quite a bit of and the surrounding countryside and in other locations, but mostly filmed here, actually in Santa Rosa as well. So they did a series of premieres, and one of the premieres they did was here in this theater, and it was, I think, in 1962, and I was very young, and but a lot of people from the city came, and it was the mayor spoke, and all kind of luminaries spoke, and there were a few people from the movie itself, and it was a big opening, and I came with neighbors. I wasn't with my family, and I think I was sitting in I think I had an aisle seat, and it was just about 3/4 up the stage left side of the building. And what had happened was they finally start the movie, and the movie's going on, and some high school kids had snuck down to the river, and we all used to do this when we were kids, go down and go under the docks along Water Street there and catch pigeons. So some high school kids had gone under the docks, caught some pigeons and brought them up here, snuck them in, and released them during the film. Now, truthfully, I didn't see the pigeons. I had no idea what people had gotten up, and I kind of got bumped out into the aisle, and I started crying, and I know they took me out. And for a while, a couple people identified me. I think all the way through Valley Vista, I was recognized by, boy, I feel like it was Don Palladini or one of those guys. You're the kid that was crying at the movie. So I had that hanging over my head through about 4th or 5th or 6th grade. Yeah, that was my first memory, really, of the Phoenix Theater. It was the California Theater in those days.
If you search the Birds premiere on Google, one of the culprits who released those birds has an article. His name is Richard Benbrook.
Yes, Richard, and he and I have talked about it since then. Absolutely. He's an author, a local author, and a local poet, and he had spoken here several times. Absolutely. A great guy, Richard.
Let's do a little lightning round. These are some kind of like B-side stories, some of which I've heard from you, some of which I've been a part of, they're not like fully forum, but they're just fun little moments. Okay. Let's start with when Guar played here. I believe you got put in a wood chipper.
Yeah, I know. I got thrown into the, they spewed my guts out. It was a meat grinder. They had me go into the meat grinder, and there was Sly Menster down there. They huddled around me and then pushed me up this thing that I kind of climbed, and boom, and they pushed me down into it, and then then I got let out the back, but I didn't. What had happened, I don't remember much about how this all came together, but they ended up grinding me and spewing my guts out all over the audience. And I'm just glad that I came back in one piece.
Here's a fun fact. This is not even a full story, just a fun piece of information. CKY did a show here in 2009. Bam Margera was in attendance because his brother is in that band.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, he met who would end up being his wife.
Yeah, absolutely.
A Petaluma girl.
Yeah, absolutely. At that, yeah.
What fun.
That's true. And they named their son Phoenix, who was in skating not long ago, actually. Maybe last year. They kind of brought him in. He was very young, maybe 2 years old, but they kind of put him on a skateboard and ran him around the building.
Here's a fun one I love. Exhibit played here.
Exhibit, yes.
And I believe there's a story about the settlement of that show.
Exhibit was a New York guy, and I didn't think much about the East Coast, West Coast hip-hop brawl, but there was a lot of tension between East Coast hip-hop at that time and West Coast hip-hoppers. And their Exhibit's manager, first off, they showed up. They were all packing. Exhibit's manager made us, said what, he was the next New York cop. And right off the bat, he goes, where are you pat searching? Nobody's pat searching. No, we use wands. No, you don't use wands. Everybody gets touched before they come in here. They made us stop the door, run everybody back outside, and pat search everybody coming in. That's how serious this guy was. Then it came time to pay him, and it was cash. And at the end of the night, and he insisted that we do the deal in their Escalade in the back parking lot. Yeah, and the first thing he did, so I got on the passenger side, he gets in, he pulls his pistol out of his holster and sets it in front of him on the dashboard. And so I'm counting the money out with him and the pistol and yeah, that was quite a scene. It was a great show.
Another hip-hop show that we didn't do here, but you were in attendance, was in Redway, California at the Mateel Center.
Yeah.
It's a show me and Dan Jalot did.
It
guy
was
who did a lot of shows
Wu-Tang
here.
Clan.
Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah.
And I love, just, again, not a full story, just like a funny thing. Method Man broke his foot in San Francisco the night before.
Yeah.
So I was asked by the tour manager to bring a wheelchair.
Yes.
We were asked to get a certain type of champagne, which was $100 a bottle.
Of course.
And no one Bevermo had it, so we had to go to a bunch of different ones. They just sprayed the audience with that champagne after we ended up getting there.
Yes, of course.
And maybe the funniest thing for me about that show is that it was billed as Wu-Tang Clan. We bought Wu-Tang Clan, but Jizza and Ghostface did not show up. And Dan Jalot says to me, hey, it's all white people in there. They're just going to throw a couple other guys on the stage and no one will notice. And 100%, 800 or 900 people, not a single complaint that Jizza and Ghostface were not there.
Yeah, it's true. That was, oh my gosh. We ended up with Jizza here, didn't we?
We did. That's another not full story, but just like a funny little piece of information.
Was that?
He was doing the Liquid Swords tour. Weirdly, I remember that date. That was August 23rd, 2008. And, well, I mean, this was you and me.
Was this the one?
This was the one where he was at a hotel in Novato. And what did he have?
He was eating, and I don't know. I mean, these guys were, I mean, come on, they're Wu-Tang Clan. They're from New York. These guys are all about 420 and getting high, I think. And son of a gun, he got into some edibles and before the show, and maybe he was not used to that, because I remember one of the guys in the back said, it was those damn lollipops. What? And so he got, this is what I assume. I think, and what I had heard was Jizza had gotten so stoned that he was too paranoid to come out of the hotel room. So it took a long time to get him here.
The hotel room that I was outside the door of waiting for him to come, because, of course, we have to get done at 12. Oh, yeah. And now we're a half hour away in Novato. It's 11 p.m. He's still not out the door.
No.
He does get out eventually. He was not in a great mood. We got him here. I think he played all of 30 minutes, maybe a little more.
Yes, but he would come on stage and do a little bit into the mic, and then he'd get paranoid and go backstage for a while and kind of hang out. We had, a Baby Got Back. Who was the guy that does it?
I I think that was like right when I started doing shows. Sir Mix-a-Lot.
Sir Mix-a-Lot.
I did not do that show, by the way.
No, but it was, you know what, I've always liked Sir Mix-a-Lot shows, but for some reason, I think he had gotten his bus repossessed at the hotel across town, and he was almost refusing to show up. He didn't want to leave his hotel room, and the promoter was having a hard time because this was, again, it was a hip-hop crowd, and we need to have this show go off. We need the headliner on now. Sometimes, I mean, in the case of Too Short, all I needed was just one song. I mean, Too Short showed up so late that one time, we only got one song out of him.
He showed up like at 1 or 2 a.m.
Yeah, yeah. And we'd been holding, and it was getting tense, and people were irritable, but nobody was leaving until, first off, God only knows where the money was at that point. So I don't know how many people get their money back. And we needed that guy on, and he showed up and played one song, and everybody was happy and left. Oh, thank you. Hip hop shows, man, they can, they are some of the greatest shows you can ever attend. We've made history with some of those, but at the same time, it can get a little weird.
So in my hand here, speaking of hip hop shows, I have a letter from the City of Petaluma Police Department written to you on October 16th, 1996, and I'm going to read some excerpts. It's this was in a time before Petaluma got desensitized to having hip hop. This is when it was still kind of new. Dear Tom, the purpose of this letter is to express the police department's concern about a proposed concert at the Phoenix featuring rap artist, quote, Drew Down. It is my understanding from the promoter, Lamar Walker, that you are very supportive of this event. We are concerned about the event for the following reasons. Let's see, I'm going to skip over a lot of this. I like this one a lot. Number 2, the, quote, gangster rap, end quote, or, quote, hip-hop, end quote, venue is expected to attract gang members from outside the Petaluma area. Past, quote, hip-hop events at other establishments have resulted in fighting and near riot situations. It's the name of the artist, quote, Drew Down, end quote, is suggestive of firearms use. So it's funny how much times have changed.
They have, but you know what? But it's not like we didn't think of that. And this is one of those things that I'm really sorry that I turned down. There were a couple shows that I turned down that I wished I never had, and one of them was NWA. But they were having issues at some of their shows. It was my one chance to get, oh my God, some of the greatest musicians ever to come from the LA area. Really, that was a band of powerful minds, powerful players, and producers and writers. What a band! NWA, one of the greatest bands ever to grace the stage, I think. And so we finally had our moment, and we were offered the show. And I actually I got talked out of it. Even people who were heavy hip hop people there was stuff going on at their shows that just kept making the papers. And so we had our chance, and I turned it down because I was a chicken shit. And I'm so sorry I did.
I still see echoes from that decision in your decisions now. You really don't like to be bullied out of doing shows.
No, I do not.
Whether it's by the mob online or whether it's by the authorities.
That's true.
We've had this happen twice now in the last year.
Yeah, that last one with Talk. Was it Talk? Is that how you pronounce it?
Taake.
Taake. This is a black band out of Norway. And
Black metal band.
Black metal band.
Black metal band.
Yeah. Black metal band out of Norway. And whoa, what they do, it's mostly from the mind of one player and writer. And what they and he creates is some of the darkest music you'll ever hear. And I'm not a huge dark guy, but when you see somebody do something so well, capture that moment so precisely and so well, and Talk does that. You can check them out online. They've got a couple tunes that just are, I wanted this band here. It was dark. It was well executed.
It was going to be not promoted by us. It was going to be promoted by an outside promoter. The tour was ultimately shelved because various chapters or groups or people who were Antifa activists campaigned to stop it because...
So he appeared at a show in Germany several years ago, and he had drawn a swastika on his chest. And his statement about that was, yeah, of course I did. I was in Germany. I felt it was absolutely appropriate. He was very clear about how he hates everyone and everything in most cases. And in this case, he was in Germany, and he said, we were in Germany. I felt it was appropriate to rub their noses in it. And he was ushered off the stage and thrown out of the country. That was 10 years ago. He's had several successful tours since then. And but he said, I want to be very clear. I hate Nazis. I hate Catholics. I hate Jews. I hate Protestants. I hate you. We hate everybody. They are the consummate nihilists, I think, in one manner. And he did it so perfectly. I get it. His shtick, or not shtick, his art is around hate. And quite frankly, there's a lot of that out there, and I think having that rubbed in our faces is not a bad thing. But when it's done as masterfully as what I felt they were capable of doing, this guy is a genius. And if you're looking for a good example of dark black Norwegian black metal, check out Take, however you pronounce it. But because of the incident in Germany, he'd had many, many years after this. It came back online. A crew, Antifa, took up the cause and said, we will not have this man perform in this country. And they went club after club and had this thing shut down. And I'm sorry we didn't do that. I think just for the freedom to do that in a country that needs to have these freedoms, I would have, and you're the one that said, are you willing to die on this hill? And I'm stupid enough that I might be. I
mean, it's complicated because you did a lot of research on it. You and I are a little different on this stuff, where my thing is, in the era that we live in, especially 2017, where, a big amount of attention is paid to a band like this.
We probably wouldn't have had 100 people in here that night.
Exactly. It's just my take is usually like, it kind of doesn't matter what the facts of this particular matter are. It seems like it's more trouble than it's worth.
This was, I don't think he was being frivolous with it. I don't think he was doing it. I think he was truly doing it because this is the art form that he uses to communicate. And you could not deny those guys were great players. It's a very powerful band. Very powerful stuff, at least in my mind. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'm a total idiot, but I really wanted to do that show, and I'm sorry we didn't. They were, just to be clear, they were not espousing Nazism. He was quite clear that, no, of course not. We hate Nazis. What? You're kidding, right? I mean, we were in Germany. I took the opportunity to do that because the Germans are assholes too.
Yeah.
In fact,
your understanding
Norway,
was it was because they were in that country that they did.
Yeah. He was there. He was doing it to be a total jerk.
Yeah,
and he did it so well.
Well, and I bring that one up, and I also am thinking of just like 6 months ago we did a show with somebody, and we had different chapters of police coming down on us because there had allegedly been some complaints about the show we were going to do.
Heavens.
It really make you feel nervous when you have all of basically the authority that has control over whether you operate telling you we can't shut your show down, but we're telling you that something's probably going to happen at your show, so you should cancel it. But you don't have to. But if something happens, there's going to be real trouble for you.
We've warned you, and it's all on you. Look, it started with a rumor down in one of the bars on Kentucky Street. And I didn't know. The police told me we've been having gang problems with some of these bars downtown. So we've got this one hip-hop act coming in, and somebody at one of the bars said, this guy is in prison right now, and there's going to be a hit out on him. As soon as he's going to be the first show since he got out of prison, and there's going to be a hit on him. And then you got to go back and study his history and all that. This was an incident. It was about an incident and a scene that he was going through almost 5 or 6 years ago. He'd also had several tours since then, and that whole issue had died down, but there was the stigma behind it, and the show just wasn't even selling that well. The bars in downtown Petaluma had gotten themselves into such a lather over it that they were pretty sure they were going to close down that night because they didn't want to put up with our crowd afterwards. And I'll tell you, the way that show ended up going, I will say, this was one of the meanest, toughest-looking group of 14-year-old girls I've ever had in this building. Holy cow, what an audience. I can understand why the bars were so afraid of them. Whoa. It was spooky stuff, or not.
You talk about the 90s. You really look back fondly on the 90s.
Yeah.
And we live in such a different moment now.
I look, one of my favorite analogies or metaphors or whatever is when you were in the old days in the 90s. I was too cheap and I hated having barricades, really. Our stage is a little bit low in standard stage sizes. And so our audience is right on top of the band almost. And there's a really strong connection that can happen between the band and the audience when it's this close. And when there's not a barricade and the bands are okay with stage diving or just whatever, and when they're not. I mean, there were many times that we would have to be traffic cops on the front of the stage. And there'd be a guy stage right, guy stage left, and a guy crouched down in the stage center. And you'd have a band up here playing incredible stuff, just blowing all this energy. Their whole scene is that's what they're here to do, is send this energy out at the audience. And they're doing it well. And they're feeding off of the 500 people that are on the floor in front of them. And then the other 300 people that might be up in the old days. Now it's 700 people, but they're feeding off of the energy that's coming right back at them from this audience that's down pitting and stage diving if they can, trying to get on stage, going through the pit, puking, fighting, laughing. I mean, wow, just getting off on the band. And if you're in between those, if you're on the stage trying to mitigate between the crowd and the band, I think you're at one of the most powerful points to be. The energy level right there, it's where both those energies meet. The band putting it out and the audience putting it in. And you're right there, sucking all of it up and trying to keep your wits about you while this is going on so that nobody gets hurt on stage mostly. You've got a bunch of equipment up here, and you want to make sure. And then, if the band was okay with it, you would be trying to direct people to get up on the stage and helping them get off. And that's just, wow. What a very powerful place to be at one of the greatest moments in mankind's history. These people are all having a great time and will look back fondly. This is the height of culture. There are people that are, that like other things. What do you mean culture? Well, absolutely. Absolutely. What a moment in American culture. What a moment in rock and roll culture. What a moment in history. And you get to be right at the point of that moment. And whoa, you can't beat it. Whoa, the energy. Whoa. I love the 90s.
The 90s were a different time, but you still sometimes get a glimpse of that magic here. And when the story so far played here.
Stay off the equipment, for crying out loud. You guys are some of the worst motherfucking stage divers I've ever seen. I've only seen a bunch of them here. So mellow out on the equipment, assholes.
Oh, just an incredible moment. Incredible moment. The story so far played here in 2014?
that was a great night. Yeah, I bet. That was a fun night.
Yeah.
And the band was so patient.
Oh, they loved it. They loved watching you yell at the crowd because the crowd was not stage diving.
Oh man, the crowd was so rude and just thoughtless. I mean, even in the old days, the old punk days. But you know what? In the 90s, half the audience were the band's best friends. So everybody was kind of good with the equipment and they were skillful. But yeah, that I remember that night. The stage divers were young and inexperienced, and they would just like stumble onto the stage and trip over cables and monitors and microphones, and holy cow, what a mess. Yeah, that was a night. But it was a great night. That's the way it harkened back. It was just sloppy.
That's what we like. That's what we do down here.
Yeah.
I think we'll kind of wrap our program up there. I mean,
don't be sloppy on the stage.
Well, please don't.
Yeah.
I think we'll be doing some more of these. I wanna do like a third Petaluma history episode.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's it. That time has come. There's a book we could do that behind, and that would work really great.
I'd love to do an episode on the Sampsons.
Look.
This is a very notorious Petaluma family.
Absolutely, but there's so much story there, and I think they were deeper than most people would ever give them.
They are, without a shadow of a doubt, very important Petaluma characters.
Yes. Oh,
wild
yes.
Petaluma characters.
Yes.
This family, just to give you a preview, if you're excited in such things, I believe tried to firebomb the mayor's car.
Well, mayor's car, they firebombed the school that she was a principal out at, Two Rock Elementary School.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, at least, yeah, I do believe somebody went to jail for that.
Yeah, and they like tried to do different militia type things or what?
Yeah,
was
they had the Posse Comitatus.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So this is a family
I think,
that still has some remnants
the
left in
patriarch
Petaluma.
was running for, I think, ran for mayor in Petaluma, but I believe also ran for the House of Representatives. There, yeah, what a family.
There's just a lot of like areas of interest that I'd like to zoom in on with these, just you and me talking, because there's a lot to talk about.
This town is like, I think every town must have its stories, but boy, has this town got a lot of stories. It really does.
Yeah. So we'll do some more of this stuff as long as we are on quarantine. Who knows how long this is going to last? It may last months.
There is just no telling. Here we are. What is the date? Is it March 20th?
March 20th.
And really, I have no idea when we're going to be able to get back to normal here at the theater, in this town, and in this country, really. Whoa.
This is the edge of history we're looking over. There is not a person alive today who could tell you what life's going to be like in a month, what it's going to be like in 6 months.
It's true.
No one has any idea. And honestly, I don't know if in my entire life there's been a moment of such unpredictability as the moment that we're in right now.
Not quite like this.
And we'll do it again.
Cool.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
See ya.
Stay off the equipment, for crying out loud. You guys are some of the worst motherfucking stage divers I've ever seen. I've seen a bunch of them here. So mellow out on the equipment, assholes.